Viewer discretion is advised. Today on the private sector, we talk about sensitive topics of sexual assault in Hollywood. If you are sensitive about the subject matter, we encourage you to stop listening when you deem appropriate. Thank you, and God bless you. All right, episode 2, officially. And we have the full crew here today. We've got myself, Michael McGee, on the show, and then we've also got Travis Scholes. Say hi, Travis.
Yeah, Travis, say hi. Travis, why aren't you saying hello?
Hello, Eric Wood.
The insufferable voice you hear now is our latest.
The straggler, Eric Wood.
Yeah.
Mr. Wood.
And then we've got Brennan Fugar.
Hello.
Hello. Mr.
Fugieri.
Yeah, Mr. Ferrari.
Yeah.
All right.
That's Italian.
And then, we've got Eric Wood here.
Yeah, my name's Eric Wood.
He's got a YouTube channel.
I do.
It's called Eric Talks.
I'm trying to post more to it, but I've just been so inconsistent with that. I hopefully will be. My name's Eric Wood. I do some YouTube shenanigans on Eric Talks. It's mostly what I would describe as level-headed political commentary about various current events. I don't like being very inflammatory on that channel. That's what Twitter's for.
Yeah.
So you want me to go through my history and politics and
just like a brief 5-minute why are you aligned the way that you are, or
Sure.
or where are you aligned even?
Yeah, so my political history started in middle school. I was told that in elementary school, I was told that I would never be a smart person. Mm-hmm. I was diagnosed as learning disabled, and I was told I would never get above a 2nd grade math level or a 3rd grade reading level. And when I got to middle school, I actually went to a charter school, and it took them 5 minutes to figure out, that's not what this guy's deal is. And so the result of that was that I had a bunch of teachers there where even though I was diagnosed as learning disabled, they challenged me. So in the 7th grade, I did a report on the Federalist Papers, which is way above my reading level.
Yeah.
But I managed to write a pretty thorough report on that. And I started as a philosophy and strategy guy. I really liked strategy games. I really liked strategic thinkings, and I really liked philosophy. And then I realized that politics was the culmination of those different spheres, and so I got very into politics. And then, I've been involved in student leadership for as long as I can remember. I'm not a student anymore, so I'm not involved in student leadership
graduated.
anymore.
Yeah.
I just got my diploma in the mail today. I need to get a frame for it.
Mine,
we did too. Not even a folder.
No,
That's because you didn't graduate,
No,
Travis.
they gave me an email yesterday saying, it'll be a month.
What?
That's because
We only had enough paper in the printer for half of them. Sorry, Travis.
But yeah, so that was my introduction to politics, and it became very it's so funny. Okay, so I apologize if I ramble too much about this, but I was in a theater club, and I was part of club leadership for the theater club, and there were 2 distinct factions. There was the traditionalist faction that wanted to do things in the traditional proper way. You're not supposed to say Macbeth in the theater, and you're not supposed to, real traditionalist thespian kind of
That's
characters.
where I was at.
Yeah, and then there was another faction, which was the progressive faction, which was throw out the whole thing. And our culture is toxic, and we need to start over.
Goodness.
And
Lines were drawn.
it's interesting because all the people who were conservative in real life tended to be in the progressive faction, and all the people who are in the in the traditionalist faction tend to be more liberal in real life. And I was kind of the ringleader of the traditionalist faction, and that formulated my beliefs, because I believe that if these traditions have helped us in the past, they should be able to help us in the future.
Right.
And, strict evolutionary theory, right? If it survived this long, it survived going up against every other model, so it must be good to some level. And so that became my political philosophy going into the real world. I got if I were to describe my philosophy. Here we go. Are you ready for the most pretentious thing you've ever heard?
No.
I am a right of center Confucius libertarian. I'm very soft on the libertarian front right now.
Yeah.
I'm very floaty on the libertarian front. But basically, like, Confucius said 3 things. Confucius says that there's an infinite number of ways you could organize society, and only 5 of them are halfway decent.
Right.
And therefore, if you have one of the decent ways, hold on to it. Confucius also says that if a tradition is actively harmful to society or people, you know, for example, during his day, burying servants with their masters when they died, live burials were a very common thing. He, being the avid traditionalist, was super against that. So if traditions are actively harmful, they should be done away with relentless efficiency. And 3, society is like a wheel. And at the farthest ends of society, you have people running around like crazy, the spokes running around a little lesser, but mostly providing stability for the outer wheel. And in the center, you have the emperor. And the emperor's job is to do nothing but course correct and be stable. And that's basically how I think society should be organized. So that's kind of libertarian-ish.
Right.
But, yeah, so...
I don't know. That center of that wheel is pretty authoritarian.
From what I got out of that
It
is
should be
that-
strong, but it should be inactive.
What,
Yeah, that's
what,
the
what I
thesis.
got out of that
Yes.
was that he was a right-of-center libertarian monarchist.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am not a monarchist, except I do believe America has a monarchy, but that's another matter entirely.
What I got out of that is that you hate the West.
I will fight you.
saying
I will fight you so bad. The West. Here's what I genuinely think. Oh my gosh, I've been having so many fights with people about that.
Now, I don't want to dive down the rabbit hole on that topic. We can definitely
Eastern principles with Western democratic norms. That is the future of the world.
Oh, okay.
That's just a fact.
Well, speaking of the East, there's been a lot of controversy over the last year or so about a little small town city called Hong Kong.
Let's go.
Now, for those that don't know, Hong Kong is supposed to be a semi-autonomous region. That a little background on it. It was a British colony, and it was handed off to the Chinese government as a protection deal. So it was a protectorate of the Chinese government in 1997. And part of that deal was Hong Kong was supposed to remain a semi-autonomous zone for 50 years.
Possibly far in the
And
future.
possibly further in the future.
Very quickly coming up on
Like
us.
the original deal for Hong Kong, the 99-year deal that saw the Chinese dynasty, the royal dynasty, hand over Hong Kong to the British in the first place was 99 years is forever from now. We don't have to deal with
Right,
it.
right.
And the same kind of principle was like, okay, we're going to have a 50-year deal, and hopefully by then the Chinese Communist government has collapsed in on itself.
Longer than any of the British leaders were gonna live.
Basically, yes.
That is my hope, personally.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked out
True
that
that.
way.
It's there's still time, man. The
So-
Chinese communists could still fall
Just
any
saying,
day now.
The Chinese government in Taiwan could come back.
It could. It could.
No, I've actually been reading up on this. The Taiwanese government is controlled by independence people. They don't want to be reunified with China.
That's true, actually.
Who would be?
But the point here is that China has invaded pretty much the Hong Kong. Now, a few months ago, there were a lot of protests, a lot of millions of people going on protests, protesting against the Chinese communist takeover of Hong Kong. And then they had several elections where a lot of pro-Hong Kong, pro-independence people were elected. And then COVID happened and everybody was forced into their homes to protect themselves from COVID. And now, because the protests have stopped and people have been afraid of the pandemic and they've been hiding in their homes, the Chinese government has come in, forced a law to be passed in Hong Kong, which basically gave China full law enforcement authority.
So I want to go into that a little bit, and I want to go through the chronology of this in a little more specificity, because I feel like most people know what's happening in Hong Kong,
Right.
but most people don't really understand the concrete cause and effects that are happening.
Right.
It's all started because there was a law in the Hong Kong legislature. And the Hong Kong legislature was saying, it was basically an extradition act, one of the things that actually triggered the American Revolution, which was if you are caught under certain circumstances doing certain crimes in Hong Kong, you will be tried by a mainland Chinese
Right.
authority,
Yeah.
which is a violation of the very British principle of trial by your peers,
Exactly.
which is something very ingrained in Hong Kong. And so that's what the protest was triggered around, is we're not going to stop protesting until that's taken off the table. Well, they took it off the table, and the protesters thought, well, let's just keep on pushing this.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that makes Hong Kong's democracy so fragile, is that they have these things called constituent seats, which is basically if you are a representative of a business interest, you get a seat in the legislature. This is very common in like merchant cities.
Yes.
So Singapore, like if you have like, if your entire economy is built on foreign investment, you should probably give them some
Yeah.
say.
I believe
in your-
even Dubai. Has
Yeah.
something
Dubai
like that,
is something like that. Yeah, yeah. So Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, Macau. And so as a result, China has such a grip on those constituent representatives that it is basically impossible for a pro-independence or pro-democracy faction, what they call the Green faction, to gain control, because 50% of the seats are automatically pro-Beijing. And that's crazy. And this resulted in a lot more protests. They wanted more democracy. Well, okay, then COVID happened, then all this happened. Then China, as the protectorate country, passed a law independent of Hong Kong, declaring Chinese government to have certain rights, which under basic law, they have the right to do. This law is the national security law, and I've actually read through the entire thing. And basically what it says is that it passed the principle, Hong Kong has an article saying they need to pass national security laws. Hong Kong never passed national security laws. So China said, you violated your own constitution, we're implementing our own national security laws, now the extradition law is in place, and anyone who so much as says something bad about the central government, we are taking. And that is the status quo that we are currently in. So anyway, just like so few people know the details of that situation.
Yeah. Travis, you specifically wanted to talk about this topic. What do you have to say about it all?
I just wanted to talk about like how horrifying it is, and like to me in my head right now, like when I think about like the number one world UN human rights violation, it's happening in Hong Kong right now, and I appreciate Eric for getting a lot of the context on that, and he kind of took some of the words out of my own mouth there and explained it better than I could. But it's just strange to me that how world events fade out of the picture so quickly when obviously like we have in our consciousness we have a hierarchy of things that we care about, and COVID-19 and what's happening with BLM right now, that's kind of the focus. But I've never really forgotten about Hong Kong, and if somebody sent me a link to a militia group in Hong Kong that wanted to install democracy, I would give money to them.
Send Raz Simone from Chaz. I think
Send him in.
that China has somehow come out of this coronavirus situation in such incredible positioning, where we've already forgotten how much of this is due to Chinese malfeasance, that they knew about it so far before anybody else did, and they refused to shut down travel. They refused to do so many things that could have limited the spread. They warranted international intervention against the Chinese, and then they're committing all these human rights violations against Hong Kong, and we're all distracted by our own issues. Obviously, we have lots of issues to be distracted by, but we can't forget these international issues that are so important. And like Eric was saying before we started recording, China has a much bigger and more threatening strategy to their essentially global dominance plan.
It's that
this is playing into.
They have, like, you know, if you get a chance, read an article written by Senator McCain, which is chess versus Go. Senator McCain, very big strategic thinker, and he understands that China is such a global strategic thinker that they're able to hold multiple fronts in their heads and America right now really isn't. We assume it's a one-front war that we're fighting at any
Right.
given moment. And it's horrid, and it's absolutely horrid. And, you know, there's Hong Kong, and there's the Uyghurs, and they're starting to reinstall forced abortions in certain concentration camps in that country.
Yeah.
And-
On racial minorities, too.
on racial minorities, and it's that. This is what I meant, by the way, when I said Eastern values with Western.
Morality?
No. Eastern values with Western democratic norms is that Asia is exploding in population, and Asia is exploding in economic productivity. It is an inevitability, I think, that Asian worldview, and hopefully informed by a Christian perspective, there's a lot of success in Christian churches in the Far
Oh,
East.
yeah, absolutely.
But the Asian perspective is going to be the dominant force on the world. And if we're going to choose what type of political norms those moralities are filtered through, are they going to be Western democratic norms like Hong Kong and Taiwan and Singapore? Or are they going to be the CCP? And like the overwhelming strategic goal needs to be that the CCP is not the dominant power informing Eastern political thinking. It can't be, because if it is, that's the dominant political thinking that will dominate the world in 100, 200 years.
Right.
And that is the death knell of the human race. It's terrifying.
People have always talked about how after the Cold War, the United States hasn't really had an external geopolitical threat to it. And
Right.
some people were going as far to say that we needed an enemy so badly that the war on terror itself became the new Soviet Union within our minds. I think there's some truth to that, but
Well, that's what happens when an attack like 9/11 happens. It scars a nation.
and I think about it's what are the real present threats to
Yeah.
U.S. not only just U.S. influence, but as Eric said, democratic thinking itself. It's not Russia. That's
Russia's
Russia-
nefarious.
Russia's
they're not
bad,
even-
but they're
but
not the main
they
player.
have no power.
I wouldn't even put them in the top 10 most powerful countries.
No.
That's
they're
fair.
not up there.
Which is
And-
why which I'm going to divert off of that for a little bit. It's that's why you have to have a strong hand when dealing with Russia. Because if you can't handle Russia, that just sends a signal to China that says, I can do whatever I want. You know, if Russia can walk in and take the Ukraine, or if it can walk in and take Belarus, which that's a lot of U.S. intelligence says that they are prepping to do that. It will be a peaceful annexation of an entire country. Yes, a close ally of Russia, but that's still a big violation, and that now Russia would have a direct border with Poland, an even bigger border with Ukraine.
We can get into the whole
Yeah.
inability to change borders
Right.
now, but anyway,
But the point is that if we can't deal with that or prepare to deal with that situation, then what's to stop China from doing what it's doing to Hong Kong right now, or doing or possibly integrating North Korea?
And this is one of the upsetting aspects of the Trump presidency, is he realized so, clearly through what he was saying, the clear and present threat of China to America. And he campaigned on all this hard talk on how hard he was going to be on China, and what has he done? China's only grown in power and in dominance in their region and globally since he's been elected.
And so that one thing I've been thinking about recently in context with that and what Eric was talking about with the concept of chess and go is that I just finished reading Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, and
great freaking book.
one thing that I agreed with him 100% on was how screwed up American foreign policy was in the late 60s and 70s, and how so many people that could have been our friends, would be our friends today, are not, because we either supported very corrupt individuals, or we gave a little bit of support to good factions and then backstabbed them later by literally shooting them or not giving them any arms.
For crying out loud, Osama bin Laden was a freedom fighter against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan during the Reagan administration, and we funded Al Qaeda during that time. So because they were a mutual enemy against the Soviets, and we were like, well, we don't want Reagan saw the economic destabilization of the Soviet Union. Then all of a sudden they decided to go into Afghanistan to try and swallow them up. And so Reagan said, I'm going to make it as difficult as possible for the Soviets to deal with this. Successfully did that. But then later on, we had to fight terrorists who had those old weapons from
the
80s.
enemy of my enemy is my friend is a short-term
It's
truth.
very short term.
So
Yeah.
Reagan kind of had like the right idea, which was he thought, who are my friends? Okay, and he mistakenly especially with the repercussions that came later, like he saw Afghanistan as one of our friends. But we think right now it's like, okay, like who are our friends in the Western world? You look at the position that China's in. It's like South Korea, Japan, Indonesia, possibly India.
Yeah. That's one area that the Trump administration has been trying to strengthen is our relationship with China. He completely abandoned Pakistan, 100% abandoned them, which was the first step.
India is genuinely the most optimistic country on the world stage, in my opinion, right now. They're being overrun by Hindu nationalists who have a very violent streak, but but they're still. I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they're hopeful.
Yeah.
And when in the end, like when I think about, a lot of people really give the U.S. government crap for how much money we spend on our military. And one reason I actually do believe in a high military budget is because there is not another nation on the planet that is willing to or has the capacity to do so right now. And going back to what happened in Ukraine, like, gosh, the German prime minister, what's her name?
Merkel. Yeah.
Like basically a German Neville Chamberlain, how she handled that situation. And the way that other European nations responded to that matter was basically to give Putin what he wanted. And there's really only one nation on the forefront right now that's willing to have the guts to say to another external power, hey, don't do this.
Yeah.
We're putting a wall here.
Which is, it's such a dynamic because, and it's, unfortunately, I think, it's a short-term dynamic. It's a short-term strategy because we can't. Like, in terms of raw numbers, if the world was just China versus America, and those were the only two countries on the planet, we can't hold the line. We can hold the line for maybe another 100 years. At the rate of industrialization and development that they are going, we can hold the line for another 100 years. What the overwhelming mission of the United States needs to be is, one, the kneecapping of China on every front. And I want to be very clear. The kneecapping of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. I adore China as a nation, as a people. I consider them to be one of the best hopes for humanity is the systems that they have built. But the Chinese Communist Party, the construction of belief that it's laughable that people should have a say in their own government is abysmal.
Right.
And so, and that means helping militarize our allies. There's a part of me that wonders if us having such a big military is a detriment. Because there's no gosh darn reason for Britain to build up a military right now. There's no reason. There's no reason for Germany to build up a military. There's no reason for anyone that's our friends to build up a military. As a result, there is a complete lack of military strategic thinking in the Western world, almost entirely, with the exception of Mattis, who's not even a part of the administration anymore. Because we have been so dominant, our strategic thinking throughout the entire Western world is completely kneecapped. And Japan, which still has military thinking, can't do anything about it because they don't have a military. And so I actually sometimes wonder if we need if a long-term strategy needs to be cutting back the military budget so that those other countries have to start building themselves up.
I would just say a huge part of our military spending goes to other militaries.
Oh my gosh.
And I think, I would say, okay, maybe the United States military We don't. When I say we need a bigger military budget, I should
Right.
specify. I'm not necessarily just talking about the United States military.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think the military building our friends up, like Indonesia, India, South Korea, Japan, and having a blockade of nations around the CCP with strong militaries and that can support themselves with capable.
But that's the thing, is that can support themselves.
That's-
because
yeah.
like I can only take so much of frickin' Scandinavian gloating. Oh, look how little we spend on our military. No shit. How no duh. How much money are we spending on your military for you? Your
Right.
GDP to your military is nothing because we're paying for it.
Yeah.
And like
And then they'll come out and say, well, we're not an official member of NATO or whatever. But you know for a fact that if Swedish neutrality was violated,
take
you
away
would-
the American
Yeah.
military,
Yeah.
and Europe is in pre-1918 within 3 months.
Oh, absolutely.
That's how
But-
long it's going to
and
take.
I think,
But anyway,
I think that, recently Donald Trump removed 9,500 troops out of Germany. And he has been slowly removing troops out of Germany. Now, he says for budgetary stuff, and it, of course, has the neocons absolutely losing their shit, right? Because they're saying, no, because they recognize, what you just said, Eric, which was, the Europe would go right into 1918 Europe if the United States decided, you know what, we're going to go back to being 1918 America.
yeah.
And so that all of a sudden leaves Europe in a real big bit.
And so, like, to return, and like all this military questioning comes down to a very simple symbolic question. Do we want a world oriented around Western political idealism or Chinese communist political idealism?
Right.
Because like the entire canon of Western political theory is from socialism to neoconservatism to liberalism. All of it is going up against one ideology of Chinese Maoists. Well, not Maoist, more post-Maoist communism.
Yeah.
And do we want a world that is oriented around freedom of the individual, political participation, rights, balances of powers, or
Right.
do we not? And our inability to quickly respond to Chinese threats of aggression, even like we don't know what to do with the fact that they're dumping so much foreign aid into Africa. We just don't know what to do with that information. It's horrible.
Yeah,
And-
it's quite interesting what they are doing in Africa. They are, and this goes into the history of post World War II America and our front on the world stage. Now, from a moralistic perspective, they're like, okay, Western nations, Britain and France, imperialism's what got us into this mess
Right.
originally, and then you guys wanting overzealous peace treaties is another thing that got us into this mess. So what we're going to do is we're not going to have overzealous peace treaties anymore, and we're not going to have imperialism. Give up your colonies. Because we're Americans, we value freedom. And it's really weird for the number one democracy in the world at the time, we still are, but at the time as well, that we would be okay with monarchy, imperial influence throughout the third world. Right? So we told them, abandon your colonies, give them independence. And they did do that. But when you have a big power void occur, that's going to be filled. And at the time, the Soviet Union tried to do that in Egypt, for example. And then you had the British and the French and the Israelis tried to seize the Suez Canal back from Russian-backed Egyptian military forces.
We almost got it.
They almost got it, but unfortunately it didn't work. And then the Americans were pissed off, and they almost made France and the UK leave NATO. Like it got really bad.
Dang.
And that was probably the one time where America was like legitimately angry at Israel for doing something. So the Soviets tried to fill that void, but they had their own slew of really hard domestic problems, right? Especially
They
since
pushed hard and fast and
especially
stretched
since-
themselves out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they had a really hard time with the old guard, right? Khrushchev was not Khrushchev. Who was the last premier?
Gorbachev.
Gorbachev, who was the last premier, of the Soviet Union, was the first premier of the Soviet Union to be born after World War I.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about previous Soviet leadership? And so at that point,
They killed each other.
Oh, they killed each other for one.
Yeah.
And the other factor is that they were so focused on the internal struggle,
Yep.
like America is currently,
Right.
Yep.
that they could not deal with America being the globalist influence that it was, right? And so I think this is also why we've seen a transition from globalist Republicans to nationalist Republicans, because they have passively recognized that globalism is no longer favoring America as much as it used to. It's favoring China more than it's favoring us.
Well, but globalism isn't favoring America like it used to because we've given up on the damn project.
Yes.
Okay, you want to beat China. Here are 3 things you got to do right now. You got to brain drain not just Hong Kong, the entire country.
Right.
If anyone in China wants to apply to be a U.S. citizen, you let them.
Right.
And you just steal all that talent and wealth and brain power. Next, you dump all of your money into Africa. We need to have such a big foreign aid budget into Africa because Africa is about to experience a massive population boom.
It already is. There's 1.2 billion people on the continent.
In 20 years, in around 20 years, they will probably rival Asia as the population center of the world.
Yeah.
So you better have those people be your friend.
It will be the next India, only an entire continent.
And it's massive. And
Yes.
it's
The middle,
terrifying.
we've seen with 30 years of conflict in the Middle East, and there has been exactly that much times of warfare spent in Africa as well, but on a tribal scale, with warlords. Eventually, I think within these next 20 years, you're going to see several strong power players. African countries start to expand.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing is that the basic economic realities of politics in general, if you ever get a chance, you should watch this video called, it's from C.G.P. Gray, called Rules for Rulers.
Right.
And as Africa becomes more wealthy, warlords will become less tolerated.
Yeah.
Like modern government structures will become the norm,
Yep.
and they will be more trustworthy in order to give that foreign aid to. And so it's inevitability that Africa is going to be the major battleground, and we're just not there at all. And it's inexcusable. And it's inexcusable because, like you said, we are so obsessed with internal fighting in this country that we can't direct our forces outward.
Right.
And so, you need a really, and quite frankly, Donald Trump is nowhere near the human being with any level of capacity to handle this global epoch level crisis.
And right when Donald Trump was running, we all knew he wasn't qualified to handle the international scene and global strategy, but we all trusted he would have the right people around him who would influence him.
And he did for 5
Yes,
minutes.
he's kicked out all of those smart people from his administration, and now he has no guiding light, he has no guiding principles, he has a bunch of yes men, because those are the only people who can survive around him. And I don't know what to do, because he doesn't have anyone who's going to guide him well now, and we know that if Biden's elected, he's not going to have the right kind of people to guide him. He also is incapable of making many decisions himself, because he's a senile old man at this point.
There's also no popular support for any external action.
Yep.
And
On either
part of
side.
that- well, it's weird because 9/11 happens,
Right.
and then we decide to go into Iraq. Half of the U.S. population said it is the God-given right of the United States to be the protector of the planet.
Right.
And if you even suggest that, now you are condemned universally by conservatives and liberals, because
We can't be the world's police.
and we are so traumatized by, I think, the Iraq War,
Yeah.
and by what a lot
By
of
being
people,
so bad at
A
being
lot
the
of
global
failed
policeman.
Middle Eastern
it was
intervention.
a failed Middle Eastern intervention, and also a perceived corruption of
Yeah.
the presidency of that time.
Oil.
And saying that basically there are two cynical ideas towards external engagement with the world. The conservative one is, I don't give a crap about what happens to the world because it's not my damn problem. Okay, and we're just going to lose a lot of men and money going in there. And the other one is, every time the United States engages in another part of the planet, we're always doing it for our own benefit and not the benefit of other people.
Right.
And therefore, we are corrupt.
And it's abysmal because neither of those are true. And like, not to get all Peter Parker on everybody, but like, it is true that with great power comes great responsibility. America is the dominant power of the democratic world, of the democratic worldview. And therefore, there is a responsibility to, because we haven't reached a point of democratic stasis. It's not default that democracy is going to be the norm. And this is one of the reasons why internal struggles in this country are so visceral, is because everybody thinks that their ideology is the one that's going to lead to a democratic revival across the world. That's what everybody thinks. And because we're all fighting each other so hard, because we believe that if the other guy gets in office, if the other ideology gets in office, then they won't defend the democratic world properly, and we'll all fall apart. You need someone. This is one of the reasons why I'm vacillating on the libertarian side of things, is because I genuinely think in order to have a major mobilizing effort to allow for a complex foreign policy, you need someone who's willing to completely obliterate the norms that dominate American foreign policy and completely stride through them without much regard to popular opinion. And I think Trump has that attitude. He just isn't smart enough to execute on it. He's not.
I would push back a little bit on that, because what does China have going for them right now that we don't have going for us right now?
Smart people.
No, stability at home.
Yeah.
Which you could argue from your perspective, Eric, definitely that having more smart people in charge would lead to more stability at home.
Sure. But it's also brutal repression, mostly.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the Chinese government has they have foregone freedoms for their people in order for them to be able to have stability. More freedom in some cases can cause more chaos, especially when you're thinking about it from an Eastern philosophy perspective. And so one thing that I do think that Donald Trump is trying to do, which is where I think that he is strongest in, is domestic economic principles, which is, with the COVID stuff happening and all that, and the economy having to go down for a bit, that has put us in the tank for a bit. However, before COVID happened, economic strength was absolutely fantastic.
All-time highs.
Yeah, and then of course, you can have, America is volatile. People here are looking for reasons to be angry, and we can talk about the billion reasons why people are more angry in the 21st century than they were in the 20th or the 19th centuries. But I think that in order for you to have a global presence, you have to have stability at home. Yep. Because if you don't have stability at home, you can't have a global presence.
All right.
And this is what I think gets to the core of the problem, actually. And this is going to get really abstract and philosophical.
Do it.
This is what Vietnam taught me. Okay.
Your time in Nam?
Yes, this is my time watching Ken.
Look like my granddad.
This is all those Ken Burns documentaries on Vietnam have taught me my time.
After watching Forrest Gump.
And this is why I think the Union could have very easily have lost the Civil War as well.
Right.
Its confidence.
Yep.
And the West is decadent. And that's one reason why Western European countries don't have a strong military right now. It's not that they just don't have a need. It's because they're so
fat.
Yeah, they're so
they've lived
fat,
off the fat of the land.
They don't give a damn about the world. I don't I don't believe that the most liberal person in France or Germany or in the United Kingdom actually cares about the stability of the planet. They only care about the internal politics of their nation. And when you have that view of the world and you have no confidence in your government or in yourself to make an external presence throughout the world, you're not going to get anywhere.
If I can add on top of that, just very briefly, it's you have this. Okay, so fun fact that I just learned: the difference between male and female voting habits is 10%, one standard deviation, which is the same standard deviation as the male and female difference of liking things versus liking people, right? Mm-hmm. And so the stereotypes, which I think are true, is that liberals like people and conservatives like systems and things, right? Institutions, exactly. So we don't really care about you, the human individual. We care about the systems that we operate in.
Which is very interesting because conservatives tend to be more individualistic, while leftists tend to be a little bit more collectivist.
Because as you're collectivist, what you're saying is, well, we should just be better people to each other, and we'll mandate you being better. Like you think about it's simple. If I was in charge, if you vote for me, then I'll just get rid of homelessness. Right? Because the problem is we're not a compassionate enough society. Well, that's not how you get home. It's not that people aren't compassionate. That's not how you get homeless people. So, as a result of that, a conservative may be able to think a little more abstractly about the world and say, well, it's not just a collective of people, it's a collection of systems. A liberal individual is going to care about the people they can see. I can see you. I know you're here, right? I know you're here in my country, and therefore you're what I care about. If you're going to abstract it, I've never seen a picture from the Muslim concentration camps in China. Right. I've never seen a picture of it. It's hard to empathize with if you're a very people-oriented person because you've never seen it. Yeah. And so, as a result, conservatives tend to care a lot more about those types of issues because you can abstract it. That's a systems problem. I get things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this is also about why you desperately need the left and right to be constantly dialoguing with each other, which is another thing that Trump was really bad for, was that he basically shut down communication across the political spectrum. And so I agree with you completely. And so the problem is that because we're so decadent and so concerned with our own people and our own systems, we can't view outwards. We assume that we have it worse and we need to deal with it here, rather than saying, if we deal with the outside world, we can deal with our own systems better because we need that bright star we can follow to say, this is why our world is worth protecting, because we don't have that perspective. It's because we're not obsessed with these issues.
Now, I want to just take a couple minutes to go back and onto one portion you mentioned earlier, Eric, which was the brain drain.
Yes.
So
take them all.
Yeah. So
every egghead.
The United Kingdom is working on a plan to offer citizenship, United Kingdom citizenship, to Hong Kong residents that apply and they
qualify.
They qualify for the criteria.
How specific is the criteria?
We don't know yet.
They're developing it.
Yeah. Loose as hell is what it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see that perspective, and there is 100% merit to that brain drain idea. Right? We did it with the fascists after World War II. We said, hey, you can either go to the Nuremberg trials or you can help build United States rocket ships.
Yeah, you can either live under communist rule or you can come
Basically, yes. However, the KGB, which doesn't exist anymore, but I'm going to bend with the KGB. The KGB noticed we were doing that, and so they took advantage of that.
Right.
And I think that there are ex-KGB agents who have since died under mysterious means, who defected to the West and said basically the KGB took advantage of the United States and the West's brain drain programs and systematically filled them up with people who secretly identified with the Leninist, Marxist, Stalinist perspective. Hence why, and they sent them specifically to the universities. Hence why we've seen a huge increase in leftist ideology coming out of the university. This is what
That's certainly not.
I will encourage.
Cause.
It's not the only cause.
It's multifaceted.
It's multifaceted. But study up on the term ideological subversion. And it was an actual tactic where 85% of the KGB budget went into, specifically to generationally infiltrate the ideology of the Western world.
And I wish that the U.S. could use a similar tactic against China, but the problem is that Chinese
don't want us.
They don't represent, or they don't acknowledge free speech. So if somebody's in America, I mean, obviously we had problems with free speech during the Cold War with McCarthyism and such, but we at least had it constitutionally protected. If you're in China and speaking about anti-communist and pro, democracy things, then you're going to be dead. Not deported, man. You're dead.
Most of the time it's deported.
Yes.
Sometimes
because
people will get sliced.
Yeah.
Usually, if you're a Chinese citizen that has already absorbed that information, you get sliced.
Yeah.
But my point is
if you're a
that
protected U.S. citizen, you might not die.
we cannot, without exposing ourselves to extreme threat of ideological subversion from the Chinese communists. Via just bring them all in and get as many of them, because it's exactly what the communist intelligence system wants us to do.
But here's the issue with that is that I think that you underestimate the sheer wave of people that would take advantage of it. If you have if you even have at maximum 1 out of 100 people who we take in being commie spies, we can deal with that. Because we're not taking them in and putting them into massive government jobs. We're saying, the culture of Hong Kong is a culture that America and Britain currently, I hope America, that America cares about and is worth preserving. And so if that means we take in a few spies, we can root those guys out. We won't be able to do it perfectly, of course, but I think you underestimate, when we take those people in, Hong Kongers are generally a little more left-wing than Americans are. But they know what communism is.
They value Western principles.
And I don't think that
and not the Western principles of the 21st century, but of the 20th century.
Yeah, and I open the frickin' floodgates. I think it is more valuable for us to have the propaganda win of taking all those people and the moral win of taking all those people than it is harmful to bring in potential
I would have
spies.
to see more secret data that you and I don't have access to for just normal average day citizens before making a decision on it.
It's a worthy cost benefit analysis.
One thing I would say, Michael, is the biggest. I'm not doubting what happened with the KGB, that it was some influence on the universities and on the United States.
Right.
The main reason why universities went under was because Western European intellectuals, especially the damn French, after World War II in the 50s, looked at communism and said, well, that didn't work, did it? And they took terms like bourgeoisie and proletariat and they replaced it with identity, and here we are with this delightful cancer called postmodernism.
Right.
And it was specifically Western intellectuals and who were tenured professors who chose that route. And many of them, coming from areas just from the Black Panthers, for example, who brainwashed a generation of students right now that are students that were brainwashed in the 60s and 70s. Are the tenured professors right now?
Yeah. Well, and it's when you have an ideology, and even in the most positive meaning of the word, when you believe something and you are confronted with a fact that makes you question that belief, your brain follows the same laws of physics as everything else. It's the path of least resistance, right? So okay, you're a weird Italian dude who's looking at the world and says communism doesn't work. Okay, how can I change this the least amount? Okay, it's not just the worker that matters, it's the Italian worker that matters. And boom, you have fascism.
Yep.
And, you get John Paul Sartre, because that's literally what Mussolini did. Is like, okay, communism doesn't work. What's the minimal amount I can change this ideology so I can still have ideological coherence? And then John Paul Sartre is saying, okay, pure materialist Marxism doesn't work. Okay, well, let's try non-materialist Marxism. And boom, you have postmodernism, belief that you can restructure reality because the world isn't material, which is a refutation of Marx, but it is the least difference to make the ideological system work. And so if you destroy a person's ideology, they're just going to go to the next best thing, which is sometimes good because sometimes you're onto something, and sometimes it just means it takes a long time for them to get to the truth. But you have these university professors who are all like, yeah, I think that communism could be the future. Oh, well, now I can't. What's the minimal amount I can change my ideology to make it work? And some of those people result in very beautiful souls who have resulted in very beautiful thoughts and complicated arguments about ideology. And others have resulted in basically Marxist with different words. And so you got to be careful, but that is a propaganda battle. It's not so much a who do we let in battle. It's
right.
Like bring them in and let's fight with them. Let's have a proper fight with them. Like if you want to be a Chinese spy who comes in here and just lectures about how great communism is, cool. Let's bring you in. We'll fight you. Like I think that is a better world.
And I think the bigger thing is that not that we'd receive a bunch of spies. I think that if America and Great Britain and other Western countries adopt this policy of let's let all of the Hong Kong citizens and all of the Chinese citizens come in, China's not going to tolerate it very long. They're not going to just start sending in spies. They're just going to stop letting people leave.
Well, but
I really don't know because the Maoist regime and the few regimes that came after Mao, I believe would do exactly what you said, Brendan. But with Xi Jinping, he has a little bit more of he's way more of a long-term thinker.
He doesn't want the same pictures of Cuban refugees coming to America.
Because the one thing that he wants to do is influence the rest of the world. Hence why, he's in Africa and he's in South America and he's rivaling with India, trying to get into the Middle East through Pakistan, right? The Silk Road, the South China Sea. The one thing that Xi Jinping wants to do is influence the rest of the world and become the number one influencer. And so that's why I think that you still have to take a cautious approach. Again, I think that you should bring in the Hong Kongers, definitely.
For sure.
But you do it in a meticulous way of which you are able to kind of filter the grain. You
obviously don't want to just open the doors and let people
as
walk
Eric
in.
said, open the floodgates.
Well, that's not what he meant.
Open the floodgates.
No,
Close the floodgates. Open the floodgates a little bit. That's where I'm at.
We take in as many Hong Kongers as we can.
Yep. It's the whole city. If it's the whole city, let's take them.
Then we create a group of commandos.
I know we don't have a camera,
I like
but
where this is going.
Travis's face.
We're not doing Bay of Pigs again. We're just not.
This time it'll work. Trump is the commander-in-chief, and therefore, obviously, it'll go smoothly.
No, it's not about who's in charge. It's about the CIA being incompetent.
Yeah.
Cheers to that.
I don't know.
Anyways,
They were pretty good at covering up MK Ultra and all sorts of things in the 60s.
Well, speaking of covering things up, we're moving into a new topic.
Smooth transitions tonight, Mike.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm kind of proud of myself. Pat myself on the back. Okay, so a few months ago, nearly a year ago, I don't know how long it's been, but Jeffrey Epstein became a household name, and his name is now flooding the gates of the news media once again. An ex-girlfriend of his, former associate, whatever you want to call her, has been arrested in a federal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his trafficking
Maxwell.
Whatever her name. I can't pronounce
it's
her first name.
Very interesting spelling, but it's pronounced Ghislaine Maxwell.
It's very interesting.
And they used to be lovers, and then ultimately became partners in business and ultimately in the exploitation of women. Right. And Jeffrey Epstein was this mysterious man who accumulated...
I want to preface, not just women, but young women, like children.
Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein was this mysterious man who accumulated an insane amount of wealth that no one knew where it came from, which is very fishy. We know that he was involved in a lot of, frankly, schemes, but we still don't know where all of the money came from. So it's obviously fishy, but Ghislaine Maxwell came from old money. And her family had a lot of connections to very rich people, to royalty, to politicians. And so Jeffrey Epstein saw in this an opportunity to get plugged into the old money and into legitimacy, which ultimately helped him increase his wealth and survive longer as a pedophile, as a sex offender.
Yeah, sex trafficker.
Yeah,
even.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is accused by multiple of Epstein's victims, first and foremost, of grooming these girls, of recruiting them, and of offering legitimacy to Epstein, saying that they were married so that they felt safe coming into this married couple's life, and then ultimately bringing them into Jeffrey Epstein's circle of abuse. But also, she's accused by certain individuals of participating in that abuse beyond that and actually being a sexual predator herself.
Right.
So that's who she is. That's why she's under arrest.
Main reason why this is such a big deal is because of the point that you brought up, which was there were very powerful people who were very close associates with Jeffrey Epstein that very well could be part of this. Again, these are all allegations, but the evidence is lined up, and it's
very powerful.
And yeah, it's very powerful stuff. And I mean, we're talking about Prince Andrew, who is 6th in line of the throne of England, and several different world leaders. Bill Clinton's one of them. Several prominent senators from yesteryear and who are currently in there. Donald Trump has some association with him for sure.
Not a lot, but he has some.
When you're a billionaire, you associate with other billionaires for sure. But yeah, there's just a lot of different. I think it was
It's hard to find a mainline recognizable name who doesn't have a picture taken with him.
Right, exactly.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
And that's freaky, but...
Yeah. So it makes you think, what the hell's going on behind the curtains of the billionaire, multi-billionaire, globalist...
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I could talk about freaking billionaire conspiracy theories all day.
It's
good stuff.
Here's something that no one appreciates. It's so easy to start a conspiracy. It's so easy. I've done it on accident a few times.
Is that here at Corbin?
Yeah, I've absolutely started little deep state student government stuff. I've done that all the time. And you get massive amounts of money and influence, and suddenly you're able to operate on your weird freaking ideas. And it's not that hard to form a conspiracy. Now, is the Illuminati running everything? No. Are there shadowy organizations, many of whom are at odds with each other, trying to manipulate the world? Oh yeah, absolutely. Freaking, it's
you can't see it, but Eric's putting on a tinfoil hat right now.
He has a big pin on his shirt that says "I love Alex Jones, free Alex Jones."
Oh my gosh. Alex Jones is correct 3% of the time, and that's terrifying.
Stop the clock, man.
And one time there was this at Corbin University. There was a group of people who really didn't want a certain person to be elected. I associated with people in a secretive way to get that person elected, and we got that person elected. And I realized after the fact, I freaking built a secret society. I didn't mean to, it just happened. So if you have this infinite level of wealth, impossible to get rid of wealth, and you believe in weird things like children's semen is going to make you immortal, then that was totally a thing that Epstein wrote about. Oh yeah, it was it's a vile, evil, contrived, satanic cult that he ran.
I just want to say that Brendan's face when Eric said that just went ghost white and was just staring into the void.
It's because you have these freaking weirdos.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Of course, if you've made $1 billion, you're insane.
Yeah.
You're a crazy person. And so
Look at Elon Musk for crying out loud.
oh my god. Well,
He's a legend.
Let's
Let's not bring him into the circles of Jeffrey Epstein.
He's hilarious because he actually has no cash. Like
It's
all
all
of his
liquid
billions,
assets.
it's all companies.
Yeah.
Like he literally barely afforded to pay the doctor's
I have
bill for his
$5
wife.
in my wallet, but I my net worth. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's hilarious.
It's great.
Anyway, so he actually had to like sell his worldly possessions to pay for his wife's a child's hospital.
He sold
bills.
all his houses and stuff because he said he wants to focus on Mars. But
It's
who knows
so
if that's
funny.
true.
He also
Anyway.
sent his car. Into
But yeah,
space.
let's
The
focus
point
on
is
this
that
Epstein situation.
like you have enough money for a private island. Why wouldn't you start a freaking weird cult on that island? Like
Right.
start a commune. Like go for it. Like, and it's just so buck wild because like I'm not a conspiracy guy. I'm not like the Skull and Bones Society is controlled by this shadowy institution, yada yada yada, and George W.
Classic.
Bush did this in college. But like
Did 9/11
if
as president.
if you have wealth and a monicum of intelligence, you can formulate a secret society so easy.
Oh, yeah.
And we just managed to puncture one aspect of this freaking
Right.
satanic pedophile cult. And like I don't think every billionaire is a part of some weird
obviously
whatever.
not.
And I don't think every prominent person is part of the same whatever, but like
But that's why this is such a big deal that Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested, because obviously we all know Jeffrey Epstein is dead. The conspiracy theory is that he did not kill himself. The official story
it's
is
a
that he killed
conspiracy
himself.
theory that he didn't kill it. That he did kill
Yes,
himself.
true.
It's
a very legitimate conspiracy theory because the world's most powerful people all have secrets. Some of them are more serious than others, but Jeffrey Epstein knew a lot of them.
there was somebody who literally tied a noose the same way his was tied, and tried to jump off the same way it was said that he jumped off, and could not kill them, and could not even get the noose tight the way that they were doing it.
Yeah, so now he's dead. We thought he would take his secrets with him. The FBI and everyone said, we're still investigating the case, but if it's powerful people who ended the case, we were like, who knows whether it will continue. But Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested, and as long as Babylon B is not correct and they have not installed Hillary Clinton to guard Ghislaine Maxwell, then we may be getting into these secrets because, like I said, Ghislaine Maxwell was the closest person to Jeffrey Epstein and the closest person to his crimes and his schemes.
which it is really good to uncover all that
Yeah.
stuff. What I want to know is the associations. Who else in the high places of the world was involved or knew about this?
That's
and
what Ghislaine
then,
would know.
Okay.
Even if you didn't participate in it, why didn't you say jack all about it? Right?
Yep.
That's what I want to know.
So that brings me into this remark, which I've made a few times to people, where kind of like what Eric said earlier, I don't inherently hate billionaires. Okay? Like
You socialist.
Many of the names that we have today are people that started out pretty small.
It's
and
like
actually
poor
built
even in
themselves
some
up.
ways, yeah.
Yeah, and like 70%.
Bezos sold books in his garage.
70% of the millionaires in the United States are first generation. And
It's-
I don't.
What people don't appreciate is just how in motion, like we have the 1%, right? Who's in the 1% changes on an hour-to-hour basis.
Oh, yeah.
Our social mobility in this country is crazy. You can get real rich real quick, and you can get real poor real quick.
There's also a thing where not a lot of people have the desire to even achieve the same capacity.
No.
As
That's a
Jeff
lifetime commitment.
Bezos. But
Yeah.
I will say the only time I'm transformed into a radical Marxist
Sing the Internationale.
is
Workers of the world
Yes.
unite.
is when it comes to Hollywood.
Yes.
There's something about I can't even articulate an opinion about it, but there's something about the cultural atmosphere of Hollywood.
I think I can articulate it for you.
Okay.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It is, there's different types of wealth and there's different types of compensation. There's 3 types of wealth and compensation. There's money,
right? I'm going to ask you to do a really difficult thing, and I'm going to pay you a lot.
Dimitri Fitty.
Yeah. Then there's power. I'm going to make you do a really complicated thing. I'm not going to pay you very much, but you'll be powerful. That's why everyone wants the presidency, right? Presidency don't get paid very much. He's the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah.
Then there is social status. You're not going to get paid a lot. You don't have a lot of power, but everyone's going to like you.
Yep.
That's Hollywood.
And you're gonna have access to all these people.
And you're going to
that
have
like you.
and that's Hollywood, and that's journalism.
Yep.
Right? Like being a journalist is a massive social flex, because I can afford not to get paid very well, and people desperately want to know my opinion about boring crap. It's a social flex. And the same with actors, right? Particularly because actors are interesting because their personalities aren't the things selling things. Because their job is to not have a personality. Their job is to mold their personality around a skill set. Now, I'm an actor. I put a lot of effort into mastering that skill. It is a genuine skill, but no one actually loves Leonardo DiCaprio.
There are a lot of people love Leonardo.
No, they love the characters he's played, and they think he's a good actor.
Love Leonardo DiCaprio too.
Fair,
If
but
you're
like
an environmentalist.
But the thing is that like I think that there is something particularly despicable about giving everything for social acclaim. It's the teacher's pet, right? It's like I'm gonna do anything to get a pat on the head, and that seems to be the very dominant Hollywood, and I would also put journalism in that category to a certain extent.
You have to be
though not all journalists.
attention-seeking
I like a lot of
individual
journalists
to become
right.
a Hollywood actor.
You need to have a big freaking head.
Yep.
And to be fair, you need to have a big freaking head to be president. You need to have a big freaking head to be Jeff Bezos.
Yep.
But like, if all you want is the adulation of other people, there's something off-putting about you. Who's the guy who played Kylo Ren?
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver, fascinating figure.
Awesome guy.
Doesn't give a crap what other people think about him. And yet he's still a Hollywood actor. He's not off-putting in the same way other actors are. But if you are so motivated by, I just like having attention, and I like people liking me, and that is literally what I've dedicated my entire existence to achieving, that's extremely off-putting. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Epstein was off-putting, was because he was so obsessed with putting himself in high-power situations because he liked it being patted on the back by powerful people.
And I can identify with that articulation right there, because every time I watch the Golden Globes or Hollywood actors and directors, getting a big medal or trophy for their creativity, it always interests me that for the past 10 years, it's become normal for whoever gets on stage to spout the most cliche statement about how we need to save the world politically.
Right. And like, there are some people who do that without the cliche, like Phoenix. Fascinating, and a guy who played
Joaquin,
the Joker,
yeah.
Joaquin. He gave a pretty basic environmentalism speech, but he said it in a very interesting and dynamic way because he's an interesting and dynamic person. But like, again, it's the brownie points. What can I say that will get me patted on the back the most?
I also think Joaquin is a genuine person, and
He's
he genuinely believes those things that he's saying, whereas a lot of Hollywood people have no genuine beliefs. They just say what people around them are saying.
It's fashionable.
What they think is
what can I wear that's fashionable? And you might not even realize that you're being a hypocrite. You might not even realize that I don't actually like this 5-pound diamond necklace I'm wearing, but you don't. And you pretending that you do is self-deluding.
It honestly hurts me because, Emma Watson was my junior high Hollywood crush.
You and half.
You're so
half the
personally
females
invested.
on the
I was
basic.
so invested. and
Yeah,
then
basic.
She is like the dumbest cliche feminist out there. Every
Yikes.
speech I've seen her give about it is just very.
And she was a special representative to the United Nations on that very issue.
That speech was so fascinating because she spoke so eloquently and she carried herself so well. But like, if you're even vaguely familiar with the literature of what she was talking about, right? Environmentalism, feminism, that sort of thing. It was so clear listening to her say those words so well and so competently that the entire speech was written by someone else. Yep. And like she might have been the one who sat down and penned it out, but like there was no synthesis of ideas. It was completely, I read this.
Talking points.
I read this from this book. I'm just going to translate.
She presented it excellently. She moved it around.
And it's important. Like Chris Evans is fascinating because he's kind of like very similar to her in that she has these very in terms of beliefs, right? Mm-hmm. But Chris Evans has this capacity when you're learning how to write, right? You're supposed to summarize this, put this in your own words, right? And that's something that not very many people can actually do. It's really hard to put things in your own words.
Yeah.
There are people who can spout the cliched opinions, but are able to put in their own words, able to put their own spin on it, have an original thought. But so many people in Hollywood, because all they do is read scripts, don't know how to synthesize their own thoughts. And so all they can do is just, this is a good quote. I'll reword it slightly and now it's mine.
I also think it's not only because of, it's not like they have a lower intelligence because all they do is memorize scripts.
No.
But it's because the Hollywood culture is so isolated in a little bubble. They all hear the same things from each other. They all talk to the same people, so they're all saying
which
the same
a
things.
normal person like Chris Evans is going to hear. Well, I agree with what you're saying, but I've only heard it this one way so many times. I'm gonna synthesize a new thought.
Yeah,
shocker. And because he can actually talk. Like it's interesting seeing Chris Evans being such a liberal person talk with conservatives. Because he knows how to actually talk with a human and not just repeat talking points.
Right.
It's a skill. And he hangs out with Dan Crenshaw sometimes. Like they have no political opinions in common whatsoever. But they can talk with each other because they're actually having a conversation.
Right.
So much of Hollywood, and I think this is one of the reasons why people, to bring it back, why Hollywood interacts with Epstein's and Weinstein's and all these kind of vile, Louis C.K., all these kind of really aggressive.
He's not quite on the same
He's
level,
not,
but...
no, Louis C.K. really isn't, but just seeing a guy jacking off towards women and not saying anything about it.
Travis is crying.
No, but this is what they do.
This is the truth.
Acknowledge it, point it out. But this is what I'm saying is that when you have this thought process of you see these things happening, but it's not within the predetermined appropriate parrot speak you're supposed to put out. Right? Because I'm supposed to say, thank you, Harvey. I couldn't have done this movie without you, Harvey. And those are the pre-approved thoughts that you can have.
Right.
If you encounter something contrary to those thoughts, you have this disassociation. Mm-hmm. And it's because you're so insular and it's funny they mentioned is this Corbyn appropriate? Because when you have Corbyn, when there are people at Corbyn, when confronted with something that doesn't fit the Corbyn mold, it will create this cognitive dissonance, and you don't know how to confront that. And I think Hollywood has that problem really bad, is that I'm supposed to think these people are good people and these people are bad people. And I have these 5 stock phrases I can say about those 2 types of people. Okay, someone I was told was a good person is a bad person. I can't apply the negative stock phrases to them. I don't know how to compute that. And also, by the way, this person has total control over my entire financial future.
Yeah, it's exactly like if you're a good actor, but you're in one bad film that just bombs at the box office, you're labeled as the actor who was in the bomb. And you're not going to get hired. So your image is very, very, very much a factor as to whether you make money and get hired. So if your image is bad politically or in any other way, you're not getting hired.
And so you take the inability to form a coherent thought about something that's unexpected, because most people, we can't form coherent thoughts when we encounter something unexpected. And so if you encounter something unexpected, Harvey Weinstein, great guy, because that's what you're supposed to say, Harvey Weinstein, great guy, is an evil person, and none of my predisposed evil person thoughts apply to him.
Yeah.
I can't think clearly. And I have this massive financial pressure.
that incentivizes me not to think clearly.
Right.
And then you're just helpless. And so like I think that's what's happening is you have this predetermined method of response combined with massive financial pressure, and even the most powerful people in the world like Oprah can just shut down and not know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you know,
my whole shtick on this, I've let you guys go back and forth on this, but I think it really dives deep into the basic reality of that needs to stop. Right? It's the exploitation of human life for, you know, it is probably some of the stuff that goes on behind the closed doors in Hollywood is some of the most fundamental destruction of the harm principle that I can possibly think of, besides outright murdering somebody, right? And you can argue whether or not murder or rape is which one's worse. Right? So my perspective on this is that there needs to be intense scrutiny on that particular block, because we know what happens. Everybody talks about it. Whether you're a part of Hollywood or whether you're just looking on like the four of us, we are four white, male, conservative Protestant thinkers who are very diverse in the minute details, but according to the people outside of our circle,
or fame, we don't know anything about prominence
and
or
outside
fame.
of our outside of our circle, like people will look in and say we are all the same person.
Yep.
I have two things.
Before that, I want to finish my point. The fundamental thing is that there needs to be huge, intense scrutiny on the group of people in Hollywood from not just the authorities, like the Department of Justice and the FBI, but from the people who made Hollywood what Hollywood is. Us, the people who watch the movies, right? You have to hold people to accountability, and you can't get angrier at someone who says, well, maybe climate change, maybe I'm gonna not focus on it that much this week. You can't get seriously outraged at that person and say that they are condemning the planet, when behind the scenes they very well could be part of an Epstein conspiracy, right? And so there needs to definitely be cultural responsibility when it comes to this area of people. Travis, you want to say a few things?
I just want to go back to what Eric said about, like, there's this, you have these thoughts that in the moment they're cliche, but they're the okay things to say. And something really interesting that I watched happen, and this is actually the nature of a lot of political ideologies right now, is that we watched with Harvey Weinstein and Epstein, like within one day, like Hollywood completely reversed the rhetoric of what it was putting out. And you might say, oh, that's common sense, because now that it's public that they're child molesters.
Right.
It's like, actually, like, you can find many of the actors that are condemning these individuals right now. They'll say in statements, it was like, I've known this SOB was like this for years. And it's like, well, why did you give that speech a year ago praising that individual? And it's like it's actually like what Orwell called double speak.
Yes.
That's
It is a
exactly what it is.
reconciliation of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say is, I think one way I would say we lessen the impact of how actors feel in the eyes of their audience and how the audience feels about actors is we terminate Instagram.
Here comes Travis with another good idea tonight.
First we destroy TikTok and the Chinese communists spying us through TikTok. Next we take out Instagram.
Twitter for sure needs to go.
Oh yeah.
Let's hear this incident.
You use Twitter.
Twitter is the only good place on the internet.
Yeah, right.
Twitter is
genuinely
it exists solely to mob people, and sometimes it's awesome.
You know the firestorm.
Listen. I know you think that because you're a newbie, you're not following the right people. I'll give you a list of people to follow on Twitter.
You know the
tweeter.
fire swamps full of rodents of unusual size? That is Twitter.
All right.
You need to follow the right people. That's your. But I want to say one more quick thing before we kind of wrap up. It's one of the reasons I am so cliche averse. Like I believe Black Lives Matter, but I very rarely say those exact words.
Right.
Because if I say Black Lives Matter, then everybody in the whole country has the pre-approved response. If you're a conservative douchebag, you say all lives matter. If you're a liberal douchebag, you say right on, brother. And you have these no matter who you interact with, you're going to have the predetermined response. So say it different. And when you say it different, you don't have the predetermined response.
Travis
it helps people think.
Travis brought this up in the previous episode.
Because I said I was actually when I went to PSU, I was actually talking to an individual that was in the BLM organization. So they didn't just say the hashtag. They knew what the organization believed, and they were all
they were in for it. Yeah.
And they were. She asked me. She was like, just say Black Lives Matter. It's as simple as that. Just say it. And then I said, the value of African American individuals is inherent and is worth protecting and emphasizing, something along those lines. And she got mad at me,
right?
Because I wasn't saying it in the same nuanced ways.
You went away from the script.
There was two reasons that she probably got mad at you. One, you're being a smartass.
Yeah.
and two, you're not playing the game, right? And because that's the thing is there's a reason slogans are so common, and there's a reason that every politician always uses them. I like Ike because you want to. It's the same reason we have symbols, right? If I say, we're all Avatar: The Last Airbender fans here. So if I say, remember, if I say something to the effect of,
Fire Nation attacked,
or I think that you need to forgive like Iroh. If I say that, I'm using a symbol that immediately can communicates 10,000 things.
It's a lot less words.
And that's so useful.
Yeah.
And so Black Lives Matter as a symbol is useful because you're communicating 10,000 things in 3 words.
Yeah.
But if you say the value of African American lives is inherent, you're communicating significantly less. Which can be useful because you're getting more specific, but it's also frustrating because you're not declaring the manifesto in 3 words.
It's useful for when you don't want to declare the manifesto. When Black Lives Matter stands for a few things that you are all on board for. You're on board for the fact that black lives are inherently valuable and equality and all these things. And then there's
the abolition of the family.
Yes, abolition of family, abolition of the police that you don't want to repeat. But there's just no room for unique thought.
Yes, and
is
so
part of the problem. You have to conform to their system.
But sometimes the inability of unique thought can be useful. I genuinely think there is goodness in having the Lord's Prayer. Yeah. You communicate, you say the same words every time, no matter what. And there is uselessness to that. So I don't want to dismiss the whole use of symbolic language to communicate complex things, because that's such a valuable thing. But just you need to know and be careful in how you're engaging, because if you're not, then when you're confronted with something that doesn't cooperate with that symbol, your brain just shuts down.
And that's why I actually I've been doing this thing on Facebook where for 7 days I post. Each day of the week, I've posted a lesson that I think is important from the 20th century.
Right.
And the one that I posted today had to do with, at some point I talked about how ideologies are essentially wars of language.
Yes.
Yeah.
And today, specifically, I talked about how the foundations of your worldview and the words that you use and the slogans that you use, if their origin is anger and resentment, or in Hollywood's case, is to gain approval of the masses and to look good in other people's eyes, if that's the origin of your slogan is wrong. Not only is it wrong, it's actually far more likely to push the world towards hell, even if it seems virtuous.
Right.
And I do agree with you, because I think if you use a slogan, if you use just 3 words to communicate something, there needs to be a very visual idea or event or person or whatever in mind. And it has to have on top of that, I think it has to have a very clear idea of how you wish to change the world, and not just a million different things.
Right. Well, because we exist in a world where it is presumed if you use the hashtag, you agree with the whole thing, right? Like you can get like, even if the words themselves are not objectionable, if you used XYZ words 10 years ago, you can still get canceled, you know? And so like,
I have something funny to say about that. Keep going.
and like, and so just like language must, and like it's useful because you want people who aren't even capable of independent thought to be on your side. And like, I say that in the most genuine and kind way possible, because just if you're not smart, even if you have a sub 70 IQ, you're still valuable, and you're still someone who should be engaging seriously with the world. And so you want a lowest common denominator approach with some things. But
Especially in a democracy.
yes, and therefore, but still, if you are constructing the lowest common denominator slogan, you better make sure that you're doing it properly, or else you are exploiting those people who don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say something off of that, and then we should probably like steer towards Hollywood more. And
The economy.
I watched, last week was the week when Christian leadership began to seriously confront what they were saying, and then the BLM organization itself. And I watched a lot of Christian leaders that I know on social media. After talking to them and speaking to them, they went, "Oh shit."
Christian
There's
leaders. Oh
actually
shit.
An organization behind this.
Yup.
And they read through the website, and they read through the beliefs and what they wanted to do, and then all the little hashtags that people made. It's like the Christian world just exploded. It was like last week, it was like all my Christian friends were like sharing articles, and it was like a desperate attempt to reconcile a month's worth of media posts where they said there is room for nuance. We
Yep.
can't have this room, and it's like
And
Right.
I was so blessed because I think like 2 weeks ago, my church, Morning Star Community Church, hosted an event, and Toby Adeye was one of the people on their panel. And there were 2 other black individuals. I only caught the end of it. I need to rewatch it. I don't remember their names because they're not close friends of mine. Every single one basically just said, screw the Black Lives Matter organization.
Yep.
Every single one was like using the Black Lives Matter language, and like, we love Black Lives Matter, we love the movement, we love the people protesting on the street. And every single African American person I have interacted with hates the org. Hates the org.
Yeah.
And like, to have
God
the
for that.
world wake up to that.
And I think there's one more. I'm gonna interject with one more thing, and then we're gonna move on to another topic before we wrap up the show. There was in Chaz, which has now successfully been completely.
Oh, we didn't get to
totally-
talk about Chaz
No.
today. Next week, I want to talk all
Next
about
week.
Chaz.
Yes.
I'm so obsessed with Chaz.
Anyways, well, I'm going to talk about it a little bit here. It was successfully dismantled. The Seattle police were allowed to, via executive order from the mayor, not the president, the mayor of Seattle, after calling it a Summer of Love festival. She ordered the police to go out and completely clear it out and start cleaning it up, right? To take back the precinct of the
Take back the
officers.
city.
Take back the city, right? It looked like a scene out of Batman, honestly.
It was weird. It was so weird.
But getting to the point is that the reason for this was because there were 2 kids, right? 16-year-old was shot, black 16-year-old was shot and killed in Chaz. 14-year-old was also shot in critical condition. Currently, as of this moment, I do not know if he's still in the hospital, if he's even still alive. He could die, but he could recover. But the point is that Black Lives Matter didn't say it jack all. And the father of this killed 16-year-old was so angry and just feeling the pain of losing a son, right? You know, a black father who cares about his children, and he loses his son, and you don't hear anything from anyone who is claiming to represent you. The one person who called him was Donald Trump. Those are his words, right? That's what he said. And the first people on the line, if you are someone who believes in the hashtag Black Lives Matter, the first people to call them should be the people who lead Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Why don't they? Because they don't.
It's because only certain Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. Because the organization is fundamentally different than the hashtag. They created the hashtag and then attached all that stuff to it.
And it's a biased ideological system that both sides of the aisle engages with.
Yeah.
You think that like, you know, there are plenty of conservatives who think if they admit fault on one thing, it will delegitimize their whole system.
But beyond that, or here, go finish what you're saying.
Like, yeah, just like if you genuinely think that your system could be undone by one poor action, and you need to do everything to say, actually, everything Trump does is perfect, then probably your ideological system isn't so strong.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a genuine fear, and like I don't want to like. There's a genuine fear among people on the left, and like I engage with them very often, and I try to be encouraging to them, that if the Black Lives Matter movement, and the movement, not the org, but the movement,
right,
slips up even once, it'll all stop.
Oh, yeah.
And no progress will be made.
Yeah.
And there was fear when this happened. There was an inability to share it because if we share this, if this is public, if we acknowledge this, then everything we've done is for nothing, which isn't true, but that's the fear, and that's a genuine anxiety. And so, like, I every time I engage with my friends who believe in the movement, quite frankly, like I do, and are like, you know, supporting legislators who are trying to make this world better, just because you've had one big screw up doesn't mean that your entire belief system is invalid.
And beyond that, I think it's the fact that the underlying Marxism behind the BLM organization is running this. And I know Eric hates it when people say Black Lives Matter is Marxist and then puts a period and runs away. So I'll follow up my statements by saying that a Marxist ideology does not value the individual. It is a collectivistic ideology. And so they're not going to value the 2 lives that were lost in the name of the cause. The only Black lives that matter are the ones that don't get in the way of the cause.
But no, hold on. We got, what's this new topic?
yeah.
I want to say before we move on,
Everyone gets.
I want to be very gentle because it's such a sore subject and it's such a dreadful thing that the world and the people you're describing. It's stupid that we have to clarify this. That's not the whole movement.
Yes.
That's not everyone who believes it.
Of course.
There are good and genuine people involved in every level, and like I even believe there are good and genuine people within the organizations that we describe that we despise. And just like there's an issue. Yeah, anyway, I just need to say that. Just like
the last thing, and this will be the last word, and no reactions from what I'm about to say because we're going to move on to a new topic. Black Lives Matter, everyone was willing to listen to them when George Floyd died. Everyone. Usually when a tragedy happens like this, when it has to do with race, it takes Republicans like 2 or 3 days usually to like for the cogs to turn on their heads and be like, oh, this is how we should respond, right? Immediately the day of, they were condemning the officer because, you know, the video was just
so obvious.
So obvious. So they did not need to do that. And everybody on the political aisle, on either side, was willing to work on this issue. And then Black Lives Matter said, okay, here's the entire slew of what we want. that was the wrong move. We could have had, I think the time has passed, and unfortunately this cannot happen on a real systematic level. We cannot have permanent, good police reform because the organization that everyone decided to listen to went way overboard with what they were demanding.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I disagree too. But we can't talk about it now.
That's just my 2 cents.
I think we can have change. It just will be a lot harder.
That's the thing. Is like, I'm making the point. The immediate change that could have happened by now has since gone.
Yeah.
It's no longer there. And any sort of permanent good reform is going to take a lot longer because BLM has decided to go all the way out in that direction.
Polarize it so deeply.
But anyways, we are going to move on to a new topic. Anyways, new topic. We have just had the economic monthly report come out, and unemployment went from fairly high 13% rating plus to 11% with 4.8 million jobs added in the month of June. Of course, COVID is the reason why the economy slumped into 15% unemployment territory. And since then, over the last 2 months, states have been reopening their economy slowly. And a lot of people are getting hired. A lot of people are getting their jobs back or finding new jobs. And we are starting to see a sort of V-shaped economy that everyone said wasn't possible.
Well,
I want to preface, we are not out of the woods yet.
Oh, obviously.
Because, yes, we are seeing a spike in coronavirus cases, while at the same time, and again, this is early data, this could change.
Yeah.
We are not seeing an increase in the death rate.
And we have been seeing a non-increase.
We're seeing a decrease in the death rates.
Yeah,
and the decrease has been occurring for longer than 2 weeks after the spike has been occurring. So
exactly.
I have only one thought on this.
Sure.
I have 2.
Okay.
Thought the first is the economic recovery I'm very skeptical of. Because if I told everyone, if I had a company and I had 25 people and I said, hey, everyone don't come to work for 3 days, my company would have a 100% downturn in employment. And then 3 days later, 100% uptick
It's
in employment.
100% a fake manufactured economic crash and a fake manufactured economic recovery. So for Trump to brag about having record economic improvement is as stupid as the Democrats arguing that he has record economic destruction at the beginning of
both
COVID.
Are completely
Neither are
ridiculous
his
interpretations.
I'm going to say you guys are kind of talking over each other, so I don't know how that's going to turn out on the audio.
It's manufactured. It's not Trump crashing or building the economy.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that a lot of the economic experts expected the 15% to turn into 20 and then 25% unemployment, right?
Yeah.
Even with the states reopening, they thought it was going to do the complete opposite of what it is doing. And so I think, which is an interesting topic that we'll probably get into next time as well, is that I believe that in a year or two's time, we're going to look back at this and say, there's a new economic theory. I honestly believe that. It manufactured, before the coronavirus stuff happened, there have been several theoretical pieces on artificial recessions in order to prevent real recessions which cause the actual harm.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the testing
Not that
grounds
this
for that.
hasn't caused actual harm. It's caused a lot of
harm.
long-term harm.
But in terms of the crash in 2007, in terms of other economic crashes we had in between 2007 and 1929, and before that too. And so there's going to be a lot of new ground to cover when it comes to, and I'm not saying this is a good thing either. I don't like the idea of the government deciding, okay, it's recession time.
Yeah.
It's time, you know, and you know that the free market would work around that, and there's way too much tinkering going on there. But I do think that there is a new economic theory going to come out, and I'm really curious about it.
There will be a lot of data to analyze for sure.
Here's my number 2 perspective on all this. I can share my number 1. Here's my number 2. I think literally every form of political and economic prediction about what will happen in the next 3 months is going to be as laughable as all of those Buck Rogers, the far off future of 1990 predictions.
Right.
I have
The
no
Jetsons.
idea what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going on. No one does. And just, the economic recovery right now is lovely. I benefited from it because I managed to get a job.
Yep.
But I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yep.
I have no capacity to predict that.
No, and I think, honestly, I want to give you something to say, Travis, but real quick, I do think that there's some theology there. You know?
No,
We cannot-
I feel very comfortable with my predictive measures normally.
Right.
I've made good money on the gambling markets for election outcomes. I'm good at this stuff.
You're good at taking other people's advice.
Right now,
Right.
nothing. Nothing's predictable. Nothing means anything.
But my theological point is that the truth of the matter is, as Christians, we do believe God is always in control.
All right, Travis, speak.
My only advice for people is just to save up money.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
Don't spend it.
I did see a poll, but, polls mean jack all,
Like-
that said that Americans are planning to have a hedge fund. They're going to be putting money into savings, which is great.
And so like I've been tempted to put money into a car loan that I have because the interest rate went from like 7 to 2%. And
Nice.
so I've been really tempted to put money into that, but I'm holding off. I think a lot of people they have a big temptation. It's like, well, the economy's coming back right now, and everything's going to be back to normal in 3 months, and yada yada yada. It's
Yeah.
like, no.
Well, one guy
You don't.
made billions by not taking Warren Buffett's advice, and he put stock into the airline and cruise industries right when they were at their lowest.
And that's what I've done.
And that's
with
what
the
you've done.
airlines.
And this guy has made several $billion as
Yep.
as the reopening occurs.
And like I've been watching how people reacted to the coronavirus spikes on social media, and it's like, what amazes me, and this is double speak right here. This is George Orwell. It's like we went from "you're a despicable piece of shit if you think we should open the economy" to not giving a shit about that opinion, but only saying, "Oh, just wear a mask."
Right.
Despicable piece of shit if you don't wear a mask. And it's like, I'm really disgusted by a lot of people right now who are really moral and virtuous about not opening the economy. And I thought I didn't really care about that opinion. My opinion was everyone should have started opening in May. That was my opinion. But I understand that it's such a gray area. I only think that I'm 55% right. Okay? And so when somebody disagrees with me, I'm like, I could definitely see it from your perspective. Okay? I'm not, but so many people were just 100% on one side.
Right.
And
But
we're, one more thing. I don't think we're going to close again.
No.
No, I don't
Because
think we are.
I don't think
it
we can.
amazes
People
me
would not
that-
tolerate it.
And it amazes me that so many people who were on the fence were just like, no, we need to keep the economy closed. Like the coronavirus cases are back to where they pretty much were a few weeks ago.
We're having new
They're not
records.
saying anything. It's like we don't care anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, oh my gosh, it's just, it's so, there are some opinions that I simply can't tolerate, If you are if you're a person who says Black lives don't matter, I have no patience for you. I will fight you to the bitter end.
Right.
The precise strategic methodology by which we handle the coronavirus is not one of those things that I don't have any patience for you with. Now, I think that there are genuine foolish behaviors. I think it's foolish not to be wearing a mask right now because there's a lot of science for it.
And there are kids that are having COVID parties where they are purposefully gathering in small enclosures.
Okay, those
and-
people I
yeah,
hate.
yeah.
I'll kick them. The problem is that because we were in a situation where we're so trained towards moral outrage that it's difficult to have a constructive and cohesive conversation about the best way to deal with things when everything but X opinion is unacceptable.
Right.
Because there need to be a more thorough strategic conversation about like, okay, do we need to proper shut down? Do we need to make it so people can't physically leave their house for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Is that what we need to do? No one was willing to have that conversation because if you are outside of the very strict parameters of the acceptable opinion, you obviously want people to die.
Right.
And like, again, like unless you're literally saying I want more people to die, you don't have an unacceptable opinion. You need to be entered into the discourse and try to understand what's happening.
Because some people will use this argument, you know, when are we going to, you know, also start caring about livelihoods? Because, you know, suicide rates have definitely gone up.
Yep.
Rape has gone up. Crime has gone up. Domestic crime. You know,
Domestic abuse, depression.
Exactly. All this stuff. Suicide hotlines are off the rocker right now. And so you have to weigh all of that stuff. Yep. People kill themselves when they lose their jobs. Like, that's just a matter of fact. And so you have to
Children go without food.
You have to, and I really do not envy anyone who is actually in a governmental position that cares, you know, because you are making, like Dr. Fauci, I feel bad for him. I don't always agree with him, and I've caught him on a couple of things. You know, he kind of flip-flopped on the mask issue and other things.
He admitted to lying to the population about that.
But I kind of feel bad for him and the purpose that he serves, and also the other doctors that are serving with him and under him. I feel bad for them because they're going to get a bad rap regardless. They're just trying their best in a lot of cases. Now, I do want to wrap this up because it is getting a little late.
Very quickly, for my own edification, I would like to get your guys' opinion very quickly on the bill.
One sentence opinion.
That the House passed to make DC a state.
It's a stupid, idiotic idea, and it's unconstitutional. It would be a 9-0 ruling of the Supreme Court that it would get overturned if it were to go into law, which it wouldn't.
Okay. What do you think about making DC statehood?
It's a bad idea.
Either of you.
Okay,
either
way. Travis, your turn.
I'm not even sure if I should say this.
Oh gosh, that's
All right,
usually
if the next noise the listener hear is just beeping uninterrupted, you'll know.
I would rather make Hong Kong a state.
Amen.
The United States.
Amen to that.
Have freedom of speech and freedom of religion in Hong Kong.
They wave
Washington,
more.
DC is
Hong Kong waves more American flags than the Democrat Party does.
I don't think DC deserves a state.
Okay.
Do you think that there's a problem with the DC citizenship not having enough representation as not a state?
So
I don't care.
Here's my 2-sentence opinion. I don't think it's unconstitutional.
Oh,
I
interesting.
think that there is a different constitutional interpretation that I think it would be eligible for statehood. There would just be certain national security matters that would need to be administered directly. 2, the only reason they're doing DC instead of an actual state candidate like American Samoa or Puerto Rico is because they know the Senate won't go for it, and it is pure nonsense virtue signaling.
Yep.
The whole reason they're doing it is because they know it won't pass.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating because I actually think Puerto Rico, American Samoa, all our territory should be states by this point.
It's probably more reasonable to incorporate those areas of DC that are actually populated into an existing state rather than give this tiny little population to senators.
This is my third sentence. I want imperial cities in America now.
Oh no.
Make New York a state, Portland a state.
Yep.
Make every city a state. Free imperial
Here's
cities
a state
in
of
America
Jefferson
now.
man
We'll
over
have
here.
we'll have to build walls for them.
I love it. Let's make every city over 5 million people. A state.
Every man a Kirkwall.
Well, then Portland wouldn't be a state. And
you're
neither
right.
would Seattle.
Just like
5 million
sizable
is a
enough
lot.
cities. I want it. I want it
This is
now.
my closing opinion.
Do it, coward.
California should be a separate country so that I can justify building a wall on the border between Oregon and California.
Amen. I think there's about 120 million people in this country that agree with you on that.
All right.
Perspective.
No,
Anyways,
no.
All right, Travis, say your famous sign off. The one you say every at the end of every episode.
Don't
Say
think
your
he
favorite
even-
sign off.
Get your damn act together so you can save the world for God's sake.
there you go. All right.
Wise words from a wise man.
Again, it wasn't funny, so we'll keep on working on that.
Yeah. we'll be back
being
next
so
week
serious.
to talk about Chaz
Yes.
and several other topics as well. We'll probably talk about some local stuff. Maybe
Okay.
some Corbin stuff. I really want to talk about some Corbin stuff.
Oh, no.
And I'm also going to be working to hopefully get a special guest on this podcast very shortly. I'm going to leave that a secret for
All right.
our audience members.
Very good. All right.
Anyways, this is The Private Sector.